Welcome to Occult Media, a sacred place where the weirdos go to create. If you ever consider yourself a starseed, a spiritual creator, or even just an artist, it is our goal to amplify your voice through this beautiful fucking matrix that we're in. I'm your host, Candace, and I encourage you to listen, receive today's download, and join our community of spiritual weirdos. Today, I have a beautiful spiritual artist, tarot reader, spiritual advisor for the artists and for creatives all around. Not to mention, she's a fucking clairaudient rapper. I personally fell in love with her a year ago, and our energies have intersected. And I'm just super grateful that Peachkka has allowed to sit down with me to talk about spiritual weird shit, man. And I just really hope you guys enjoy today's episode. So Peachkka, welcome, baby. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Hi. Honestly, first and foremost, it's an honor. It's an honor more than anything to just be here and having a chat with more like-minded people. I feel like the more that we can just get together and talk about these things and it not be just something that we're kind of just thinking about and not sure, I love it. So thank you so much for having me and sharing energy with me. I'm grateful and blessed to be doing this.
Absolutely. What's the funny thing is that I was just saying that we're both clairaudient. At least for me, the more amplified gift for me and my psychic abilities is clairaudient. And frequency and music has always been a way that my spiritual counsel, as well as my higher self, just communicates to me on a daily basis. Yeah. And I, for one, just would love to hear your story, because a lot of readers or listeners may not really know who you are. So I would love for us to just start there, and then we can dive into all different aspects and all that jazz.
Yeah, I love that. So for those of you who may not know me, or if you do know me, you probably know me for my music. I go by Peachkka. That is my artist name and my creator name. My real name is Nikki. I will give you all a little bit of insight. I don't like to be too mysterious, but that is how people know me, is by Peachkka. And that has a whole background in and of itself. But I make music that is affirmation based. It is intention based, and there is so much power in the words that we say, and having a catchy beat that goes along with it, that gets it stuck into our head, is really powerful. And if we can make music with intention to have sort of an anchor to these things that we want to embody, to these things that we know are inside of us, rather than just kind of getting what I like to call useless words stuck into our head. Not that it's not fun, not that it's not entertaining, but if we can have something that is a little bit more meaningful stuck into our head. And I'm not saying that to say that there is any bad music to listen to. I want to make that very clear. I love all music, and I think that there's a place for every type of music. I just think that, just like anything else, what you consume is incredibly important.
1000%.
And in terms of my clairaudience, it wasn't always something that I knew that I had. It wasn't always, even as a creator, it wasn't something that I was always creating from intentionally. It was always there. But I didn't know that it was a part of me. And for a while I didn't trust it. I was going through some hard times a couple of years ago before I really kind of understood that this was a gift that I had. And I didn't like the messages that I was getting, because I get channeled messages in my lyrics. I didn't like what I was being told. I was being told that my relationship was a sham, and I was being lied to, and all these things. And I didn't like the lyrics that were coming out. And so I was like, no, I just have writer's block. I don't, I'm not able to create right now. And then as things played out, those lyrics that I did write down eventually, they ended up coming to fruition, and it all ended up being true. And that was kind of when it clicked for me that it's not just me, right? It's the messages that we get, the thoughts, the things we hear, the things we see that so happen to be coincidence, right? It never is. It never is. Obviously, I know you know that, but like for anybody who's listening, it's like, it's not like, we call these things gifts, and we say that we're clairaudient, but like, just like you were saying, we all have the ability to tap into these multitude of gifts. It's just the biggest thing is trusting it. The biggest thing is trusting it, and not being scared of the messages that you're getting or whatever. So yeah, I think that's really it. And then whenever I kind of accepted that that was what was happening for me, I was like, okay, well, let's filter then these messages that I'm getting, and then know which ones are for me to process, and then which ones are for the collective to hear.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at now. That's the big thing for me now, is what part of my work is for me, because our creative gifts are for us to process our feelings and our thoughts. But if we can relate to other people with them, then that's great. But there needs to be a balance there. There needs to be a sort of, or does it need to be? For me, I like there to be a balance. I like there to be an edit.
Well, me too. Like, I totally get what you're saying, because it's like, I get a lot of messages too, especially clairaudient stuff. And sometimes I'll have the urge to go on live and just do a reading because I'm hearing a song and it sounds like it needs to be for someone. So let me go on live. But then sometimes, especially when I'm going through my own stuff, I'm hearing songs or I'm hearing things, and it's like, wait, I need to process this first, because it's for me, I'm still the one receiving this channeling message in some capacity. So I have to then be able to decipher it. And if it feels like I need to spread this to other people, especially after I understand what I'm hearing and what I'm feeling in the process of that, then if I provide that to other people and they vibe with that and they understand it, that's a double whammy. Like, not only was it for me, but I could then provide that knowledge and teachings to the person or the collective in that way, so that they can see it too. And like, or also, I like to say POV, like you're seeing it from a different POV instead of just like your own eyes, right? Like you're seeing it from a higher perspective that will allow you to really channel it. So I 1,000% what you're saying. I also love how you said about the relationship and hearing things, because, well, actually, let me go back to what you said earlier. You also said about how you were a creative, but not really like a creative, but like you were embracing that creative side with you when you were younger, and then really allowing that to flourish. Like I too was kind of the same way. Like I like to say I dabble in artistry. I'm not that fantastic of art. Like, you know, some people really can pick up a paintbrush and like literally create an art piece. Whereas me, like I dabble, I draw, I sketch and things in that nature to help me get the ideas out of my mind. But it wasn't until recently that I discovered how that art form can help me kind of express my emotions in a more creative way than just speaking and listening to music. So it helped me amplify that. Yeah. But I also loved how you were talking about, as I mentioned, you talking about how you kind of received messages about your ex, because I got the same thing. And I was so, I mean, you know, right? Like you have these, right? You have these messages or these inklings, like it's not going to work out, but you stay within it because you're like, but I, you know, like you go, but I, like, I know every girl or guy can feel that message. It's like, and so you try to make it work. And then you slowly lose that voice. But then when shit really starts to hit the fan and things need to kind of be awakened within you, or kind of like put you in your face, you understand it, it becomes more louder. And it's like, you can't really ignore it then, because you are physically seeing it. Your emotions are now aligning to what you're hearing in your mind, which, you know, it is the thoughts, but it is also that clairaudient. Like it could be your higher self saying like, can we get rid of, like we could be doing other things right now, like, and you're over here still stuck in the same mundane thing. So can we try to like remove ourselves from this person or situation? So I thought it was very interesting that you two got the same thing. I never really talked about that with anybody because I thought I was like, how you're in a relationship, sometimes you feel like you're crazy. And
Yes.
for me, I didn't know,
Yes.
I didn't know about telepathic. I thought I'm hearing him say things and he never said that. I'm like, well, am I crazy? Because I heard you. Wait a minute, you know what I mean? And then I'm realizing like, no, I'm really hearing what you want to say to me, but you don't have the guts to say it to me. So my subconscious mind is sucking that in and I'm not really noticing that frequency that I'm attracting right now. And it was really like a mind fuck, especially if you don't know you have this strong gift as clairaudient. It really can mess with you for a little bit until you start to realize what it is.
For sure. Like, so I don't know if you listen to any of my old music, but like there's a song on one of my older EPs called Think I Didn't Notice. And I wrote a lot of that song when we were still together. And like I obviously didn't put it out and it came out on like my sort of breakup EP, but like the lyric that I got was, well, you thought I didn't peep the drama, which you thought I didn't know about your baby mama. And I didn't. And that was the lyric that kind of made me shut down. And I was like, what? I was like, no, this isn't like, this can't be for me. This can't be like, I was like, I'm still with this. I still love this person. Like, whatever. Like, I'd never had an ex that like did this whole thing. I was like, I don't know where this came from. And then, that was a whole thing that then came out later on. And I was like, okay, so that was when I was like, it kind of threw me for a loop and it scared me a little bit, if I'm not gonna lie, because like if the lyrics that are coming out, like obviously they rhyme and they sound good and whatever, but if they're not coming always from a place of me consciously devising them, then I have a little bit more of a responsibility, I think, to what I do share and what I repeat and what I decide to memorize and what I decide to perform and all of those things and share and go viral and all that stuff. It's like, okay, so now it's a responsibility of, like I was saying, editing, but also being very clear of, this is a channeled message and this is for someone. I'm not saying it's not for me, but it's for someone, and it's like, pay attention. And yeah, it's just, it's scary when you get those, and especially when it's something that you don't want to hear and you don't want to believe, and it's almost like, yeah, it's like, it makes you not want to trust yourself then. And that's where then, especially if you're already in a relationship that is kind of playing on that, it can lead to some really bad spirals, I think. It did for me anyway, until I was able to be like, no, I trust the thoughts that I'm having.
Yeah.
And that's that's a journey in and of itself.
I'm about to say, that's a whole nother chapter, a whole nother book right there. Because I can absolutely agree with you, where for me too, when I was trying to trust what I'm hearing, it was like, well, damn, if this person's not saying it though, I'm asking, why is it I'm not getting comfort? And then you want, for feminines, or I don't know, I don't want to say for anyone, but I can say for me as a feminine, I want that clarification. Like, I don't want to continue on doing something. And it was like, well, I know you're lying, but you don't want to tell me you're lying. So I have to really trust myself that I know you're lying, because obviously you're not being truthful. So I really do have to, I really have to put myself first, which is hard. It was hard for me. My big lesson through my own awakening was self-love and self-care and like putting me first, because it was really hard for me to do that. I've only, like, for just context for anyone listening who don't know me, and probably you also too, Peachkka, probably don't know, but like for me, I had my first son at 21. And I had, had to go into marriage that people forced me to, because, you had a baby, so you have to marry them. So it was 2 young kids having a child that didn't know anything to do with that. And then, so in my mindset, it was all about like my son, not necessarily the marriage. So I had to put someone in front of me. So I didn't really have that good structure in a home to know to put yourself first, to love yourself like that. That was not taught to me as a woman, as a daughter.
Yeah.
No one, so it was more putting people in front of me. And then I was in relationships after that it was kind of that same foundation. I had to put other people in front of me, other people in front of me, other people in front of me. And then my last relationship really did. And people say, I'm gonna say shout out to my ex because you taught me a lot, baby. And it's not even hate. Like people think like you should have hate, and I'm like, you don't understand. If you're really in this love and light, and you're really trying to elevate and grow, it's a learning experience that this person has done for you that has allowed you to elevate in a way that you didn't even think was possible. So for me, he taught me that I have to put myself first. Fuck anyone else, doesn't matter their title. Like I have to, if I don't do it for me, then how can I expect you to do it? How can I expect you to love me if I can't love me? So it was very much a big step for me to have another child, 2 kids with another man, not knowing what I'm going to do with my life, but knowing that if I don't take a chance on myself to just trust me and trust what I'm being told, what I'm hearing as a channel message, that if I were to do this, a year later, your life will be completely different. And here I am a year later in a completely different life, and I am loving it. So I am here, sometimes it's a weird trust, but when you trust it, it's a beautiful trust. And then you start to really be like, okay, I can fuck with this. Like it wasn't lying. I got the clarity. I can really start to allow myself to be in it and not be fearful of it, especially since I know for myself, trust was a big thing, and trusting something I can't see initially. It's my own gift. It's someone else coming in as either it's my counsel coming in or it's my higher self. It doesn't matter. I'm hearing it. So I have to trust what I'm hearing, even though I can't put a face in the context to it. So trust it's a big one, but if you do it, it does lead you to beautiful paths that you never thought was even possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like what you were saying about just kind of accepting it and moving past the fear, it's like kind of believing and moving to that part of it where it's not just I'm hearing bad things and I'm hearing, how things are going wrong. Then it's trusting, like you were saying, that I'm going to, this time next year, I'm going to be better. And it's moving past the premonition of it, right? To it being to it being something that can be used as a tool and as a guidance system, as opposed to being like, okay, well, if I would have just paid attention to this, then things wouldn't have been so bad. It's like now I'm seeing beautiful things rather than just like warnings. It's like, does that make sense? It's like,
it's a different POV.
There you go. You move out of this, like, I need to be in defense mode, right? And I need to be like always looking out for myself and make sure that I'm okay, to what is going to lead me to my ultimate joy, to my highest good. And like that transition is the awakening in and of itself, that we're not just kind of like, we're not just on defense. We're not suffering and we're not moving through this world being attacked. We are creating and orchestrating as we go along.
Heavy like on the
happening for you. Yeah.
9 of Wands, 10 of Wands. Louis, you were saying that's all the energy I got. Like finally not being defensive and saying, you know what, I'm putting down the barriers and fuck it, YOLO. Like I would rather go through something so unknown than to deal with this thing again, because I already know what I don't want. And even though I don't know the next steps initially, the fact that I'm just saying I'm choosing me to go in this new direction is enough. And that alone opens even more doors for you that you can't even explain. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that you said the 9 of Wands as well. That came out in my reading this morning for my Patreon, but it's been coming out like for the past however many weeks. And like, energy it really has been that bucket YOLO energy. I love it. It really is. It really is. It's kind of like, okay, well, everybody wants to be, and this is very off topic, but whatever, we're going with it. Everyone wants to be in this energy of like, like things are going to hell in a handbasket. My mom said that the other day. She was like, things are going to hell in a handbasket, Nikki. And I'm like, okay, mom, you know, but like that is the general energy is that it is, people are so scared and so fearful. And it's like, okay, well, if it's looking or seeming, or the perspective seems to be that things are not good, then wouldn't the energy be fuck it more than anything now, or more than ever now? It's like, if there's, I don't know.
It's like,
That's a whole different, again, a whole different
no.
conversation.
No, I feel like there's something fear for someone, because I feel like if you're looking at it from a fear-based, you're gonna stay in the fear-based, fam. That's your
Always.
mindset. Like going back to again about that mindset, the thoughts, like it literally just goes back to that. If you're constantly repeating those things or thinking that, oh, my life is gonna be like this all the time, then yeah, you just manifested that. Your words are spells. What you say is spells. You just literally told the universe, I want more of this. Even though that's not what your intention, they don't know that. They just hear words. They don't know the contents and the tone and all that other shit that we as humans put energy behind. They only hear the words coming out your mouth or your thoughts that are constantly being repeated in your head. So if that's something that you are really not wanting, then that takes courage, that takes strength, that takes the willingness to say fuck it and really mean it. It's one thing to say it. It's another thing to actually action behind it.
Absolutely, because like the thing of it is, like you're right on the money. It's like the universe doesn't know the difference between I want that and I don't want that, because you're still focused on that. And whatever you're focused on, the universe is going to bring you more of. So the biggest thing is, whenever you do want something, is to note that you want it, be aware that you want it, and then feel good when you think about it. Yeah. And if you don't want something, don't think about it at all. Yeah. And that's where people get fucked up, because it's hard to not think about something that makes you upset or that pisses you off or that makes you scared more than anything, you know? And that is the training. It's okay, this is not a thought that serves me right now. Let's redirect, because even thinking about how much I don't want it, or how, it's not for me, is still paying so much attention and energy to that thing, you know?
Yes. Even just like taking a moment to assess it, like find the underlying meaning behind it. Because it's usually not the thing you're thinking about. It's usually something so much like buried deep that's where a lot of people really fuck up even more. Like some people, so it's a weird thing, right? Like people acknowledge that, yes, I have this mind thing and it's fucking me up, but then they also don't want to dive in deeper because they're not sure what's going to come out. But at the same time, if you don't dive in deeper, then you're just going to repeat the same thing and then wonder, why am I not getting over this? And it's like, because you're not giving yourself that time to really go inward and be vulnerable. Just want to sit there and say to everyone, it is okay to be vulnerable. The only person that is saying you can't be vulnerable is you. Fuck what anybody else has said to you about you cannot cry or shed any tears or do anything in that nature just because you're not supposed to be feminine and all this other shit. Fuck that. Because where's it gotten them? Maybe look into that. If their life is looking the same shitty shit and they're telling you that shitty advice, maybe don't listen to that shitty advice and like actually go inward. So I just felt like I needed to say that to someone in here today, needed to understand that it's up to you. We create our reality. This is just a matrix. We are just Sims being played out. Hey. And we have the choice. You know how Sims, they have the option, right? You have the option A, B, C. You can choose which one you want to redo today. So which one is it, baby? Then choose.
I love that you say that, because this is something that I talk about all the fucking time, because I really do believe, like, okay, so, I mean, even to bring it into the spirituality aspect, because we always do and we always will.
Let's do it.
I don't know if you know of Neville Goddard or if you've heard of him or whatever. Yeah, of course.
Look, law of assumption right here. I have like my thing wrote out, but everything's already mine. It's already, I accepted. It's fine.
For the listeners that don't know, he is, you know, the daddy of spirituality, we could call him. You know, he is very, you know, one of the forefathers of the law of attraction, the law of assumption, and these sorts of ideals and the belief in self, right? And he has spoken a lot about, is this life a play or is it a game? And one of my favorite podcasters and YouTube people. His name is Brian Scott. He has a bunch of meditations and things on YouTube that he's great. He was talking about this, this dichotomy of, is life a play, meaning like, is it like a script that has been written out, or is it a game, meaning something that is interactive? And like the game of The Sims, a simulation game or a role-playing game, even like life is really like live action role-playing, if we're really thinking about it. But like, I love that you said The Sims, because I am obsessed with The Sims. I've been playing it since I was a kid, but like, I've always said that like life is The Sims, and it's like the more belief in yourself you have, the more expansions you have for the game. Wow. And the more like downloads and CC and all the extra bits and bobs, right?
Think about like the concept of the game. Like the concept of the game is like you pick and choose, and the more you pick and choose, you get to see your life unfold, right? Like that's the whole point, and you're creating it the way you want. So when I think about it, it literally is like that. Like you have the choice to be rich. If you want, you have the choice to have a gajillion lovers. You have the choice to be miserable in your own bed and not do a shit. It's your choice. What are you choosing today as you wake up from The Sims?
Absolutely. And like today, and also just like, what do you believe is possible for your life, right? Like, because some people, when they know of The Sims, they only know of the base game, right? And this is like, Sims lore, right? But some people only know of the base thing, but then they discover, oh, there's the Get Famous expansion pack. Oh, shit. That exists.
The extra
and like
the extra pack. I love it.
But people don't think that way in terms of their own life. Like, there's so many people who are just very cool with the vanilla base game. Wake up, go to work, come home, whatever. That's it.
That's how I think about like NPCs. People just like wake up, go to work, come home, go to sleep. I'm like, how is that life? Like, we're supposed to be experienced, man. That sounds so boring. So, I mean, I love vanilla ice cream. It's one of my favorite, but man, that's fucking vanilla. Can we add some spice, some sprinkles, some glitter? Like, what is this?
Something like a little chocolate sauce, anything, like anything. Yeah, it's there is the belief in the limitations for so many people.
The limitations cap already. It's like, we're told there's a cap.
Yeah.
It's a death sentence in itself. Like, if you repeat that death sentence, that's your death sentence. Literally, you're repeating that for your lifetime. I know, like, for my life, I don't know about you, but I just always been like, there's got to be more. I want to experience more. This can't be my life. This can't be all that what it's crapped up to be. Why is it that I only get to experience this, but other people get to experience travel and fancy cars and champagne and just jewels on you, just being able to do this and be like, yes, you know what I'm saying? Like, the little things. I mean, it's not little, but like, I want to experience those things, but a lot of people don't know that. They just know caps, and then this is it.
Yeah. And they get caught up in the what we're supposed to do rather than what I want to do.
Yes. They're caught up in the this is what I'm told to do, and I'm behaving as a little soldier as I need to, because war and all that perpetuates in our school rhetoric and all that. You follow the rules. This is it. Especially if it's like family dynamic and the family's telling you have to go this way in your life, and so you make all these changes even though inside you're like, I would rather die a little bit than have to wake up and do the same mundane things, but yet they do it. And it's really sad, because I want to be like, can I help you? But I can't help nobody if they still taking that blue pill. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, well, because the gag is like what we were talking about before, with the trusting the self. It's kind of, they feed into each other, right? It feeds into because it's all of these things. Being a part of this system requires you not to have to trust yourself. You don't have to trust yourself because you're being carried through everything. When you trust the system, you don't have to trust yourself. And
that's scary to people, right? It's like,
well, to people who have realized that the system doesn't benefit them. There are so many people that the system benefits, or they have told themselves that the system benefits me, or that I need to fit into the system. And I don't mean system as in whatever, pick any one. We can talk about the music
so
industry.
Many.
We can talk about the education system. We can talk about, the corporate world. We can talk about anything. The government, it can be any system, right? Even family systems. people like they think that they have to fit in rather than trusting that their own individuality is what's best for them.
Yeah.
And people are so scared of standing out, because when you stand out, then you have to stand 10 toes down on whatever it is that you're different, whatever
Yeah.
you're different about, or else people will eat you the fuck up.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, that's just like, unfortunately, again, how we're conditioned. Like, think about high school. Like, think about
I was
the
thinking about like
different or
middle
the weird kid.
school
Yeah.
or like I wasn't even thinking like elementary. Like for me, like I'm from Alaska. So I
Wow.
grew up in you could just imagine
You
what I grew
can.
up in and the kind of
Can.
school system that I grew up in and the people
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. It was very much of, I was for a whole elementary school, not even kidding you, all the way to the the grade of 5th grade. I was the only black girl. Only black
Wow.
girl. Probably there was like maybe 40 kids that are native. The remaining were white. And it was a lot of all of us brown, tan, picked on my entire life for 5 years in that school. It was torture.
Jeez.
And then I remember begging my parents, being like, please take me out like to another school, because I saw like how the middle school that was near to the elementary school was the same thing. And I was like, if I go here, I'm probably going to go through some very traumatic
Yeah.
experiences that I don't want to do. So they took me, like, for context, I lived in a town called North Pole. Yes, that's what a town was called.
Wow.
Super. I'm just telling y'all just like, wow, like, yes, this is a real town. That's the town I grew up in. But the city that was like a little bit bigger was Fairbanks. And that Fairbanks had more of like more brown people, more Latinas, more people of color. And I was like, can I please, like, it was like we had to go in town to get our groceries, in town to go do this. So I remember seeing all these different high schools and middle schools. I was like, please, Mom, can I please just go to school in town? I don't care what I have to do. If I have to take a city bus, blah, 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 I will do that, because I just want to feel like I belong in some context, instead
Have
of
some
being
sort of
like,
community.
a little bit more of a community for me. So it was definitely that structure of getting away from that, for me to really find other people, to be like, okay, I'm not the only one in this freaking city that is black, that I can now resonate in some capacity and learn and grow from there. So it was very different. But yeah, just thinking about that constraint of how that formation was and how their mindset were, like, that it worked for them. It worked for a lot of those kids in that statue. It just did not work for me. And I knew I needed to venture out. Otherwise I was gonna.
Well, and like, honestly, like, give your inner child like a little pat on the back, a little hug for that, because like that really is a turning point, of accepting that, no, this isn't for me. I'm not going to try to mold myself and break myself down to stay in this system. I'm not going to stay quiet. I'm not going to, just trot along and, do what I have to do. Like, I'm going to speak up for myself. I'm going to use my voice. Even, well, how old are you in 5th grade? What, like 10? Not even 11?
So.
Like, 12 oldest. And it's like, like, to advocate for yourself in that type of way, even I'm sure through tears and whatever emotions we had to have at that point, but you were able to do what you needed to do and be heard and be listened to. And like, that is just so beautiful. That is so beautiful.
I would really love to talk about how you got into tarot, because I kind of want to share how I got into tarot too, because that's one thing that I love watching you, by the way. I don't want to sound stalkerish, but when I do go, I'm hardly, it's weird. I am online, but I'm only online for work. And then I kind of don't stay online because I don't want to scroll and all that stuff. I don't need to do all that stuff. But when I do, and I'm on there and then I see, I'm like, I gotta go check out my girl. So I like watch you for as long as I can, like as I'm
God,
working, So I'm just like, look at her giving a collective. It's just like really beautiful. And I love that we both share that love of cards. At the end of the day, y'all, it's just cards. Don't trip out and shit. Right? Like, Yes. But I love just picking up like a pair of cards and just shuffling. Like, it literally makes me lit in the inside. So I just love to hear how you got started, because I don't really get to talk about this with other tarot readers. They don't really share that much. They just shuffle cards. And like, I just would love to know how like those cards got in your lap and how you just fell in love with them.
I love that. Thank you for asking that question. And I love talking about it. Like, it's one of my favorite things to talk about. Like my clients ask me sometimes, and like, because I have a lot of people who want to learn, and there's all this rhetoric around, well, somebody has to give you your first deck, and you
Yeah,
have to
what is
have all this,
that?
and I'm just like, shut
Who started
up.
that
Like,
shit? Like, fuck
shut
off.
up.
Whoever did that.
It's so annoying. Like
So
the
annoying.
gatekeeping shit is so annoying. It's like, if somebody genuinely wants to learn, then like give them the tools to learn. But
Yeah.
anyway, so I got my very first deck. I have them here with me. I got my very first deck around like almost 7.5 or 8 years ago now. Which it makes me feel really old, but that's okay. That's okay.
You ain't old girl,
Yeah,
stop.
yeah, around 7 years ago, I think. And I was I was in my bachelor's degree, and I was working on a piece of theater. I studied theater and performance art, excuse me. And I was working on a piece of theater that was physical. It was a physical theater piece. There were no words. It was in our movement class, and I was devising and I was writing this script that had no words really. It was kind of just all about feeling, and there was a lot of us in the class, and I wanted us all to kind of have a part. And I was like, well, I want something that has a lot of different pieces and a lot of different working parts. And the story of the tarot, the idea of tarot cards came into my head. I didn't know anything about them.
Wow.
I was just very interested. I was always spiritual. I've always been into witchy stuff, the occult. I've always had crystals. It's always been something interesting for me, but it's never been something that I knew, like genuinely, and didn't, nobody in my family knew it. I had maybe, I think, angel cards I had, and it was just kind of like, everybody has a deck of oracle cards or whatever. And so I bought them. I was living in London at the time, and I went to this small little witchy shop, and I bought the original Rider White and Pamela Coleman Smith deck, and I got my cards read. I don't even remember the reading now. It was just so long ago, and it was just like a little half an hour, whatever, in-person thing from like this little guy that was at the shop or whatever. But I wrote this play, and I started doing the research, and I started figuring out what the cards meant. At the time, I really only was worried about the major arcana because I didn't even really know what the separation was. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything, and I just wanted to know what the major arcana was, what the cards represented, and then I just kept kind of doing research. I would just kind of bring them out for fun, as people do, and I just had them, and they were always with me. Whenever I would move to a new apartment, I'd bring them with me, and I just have them on my deck on my like altar with my crystals. It was my altar before I even knew what an altar was.
The Avon Segura altar right there. That's really beautiful.
I would keep them near my grandmother's ashes, and like it was there. They were just there on my altar. And then like 3 years after that, I was going through a really difficult time with that relationship, the one that I was just talking about. And it was really emotionally abusive, and I'd kind of isolated myself from everyone. I didn't really have friends that I could really trust or talk to, or I felt like they would have judged me or been like, I told you so, whatever. And I needed advice, and I really just wanted to talk to my grandmother. And obviously she'd passed, and I looked over at her ashes, and my cards were right there. And I was like, what the fuck do I have to lose? I was like, what do I have to lose?
Beautiful.
So beautiful. And I shuffled them. And at that point, I still had to like look it up, what the meanings were and what, and I had it was just honestly tears streaming down my face. It was the best advice or insight I could have gotten. And just, telling me that this was part of my story, and, things were going to turn, and inevitably they did. But more than anything, it was just a comfort that I had something or someone that was a part of me, because at the very least I was like, okay, well, this deck of cards has been with me for 3 years. It's seen everything I've gone through. So it has to have something to tell me, even if this isn't my grandmother, which I know now that like our ancestors and my grandmother specifically communicates with me all the time. But it's like, I was like, I don't know what this is going to be. I don't know what I'm going to get, but I was comforted. And that had so much value to me that I then started to do more and more research. And I was like, I need this at the very least for myself, because I've never felt more connected to a message than I did at that point. So the deck, when we got the magician there. And yeah, and then I kept researching, and I kept reading for myself, and then I was reading for my friends, and then during COVID, it was kind of like, okay, like, you are having these downloads and having these thoughts now that need to be shared.
Yeah.
And I think it was just a foreshadowing as well of knowing that spirituality was going to be and is going to be mainstream. I mean, it's going to be.
Yeah.
Like it was back in the 90s. It was popping back in the 90s, or like, you know, late 80s, early 90s. People were super spiritual, and that was very cool. And it's coming back. But it was more of a, okay, you can get people to pay attention with something that's trendy, but have a message.
Yeah.
You know, because there are people that take the trendy thing and then just tell people that a lover's coming back or that something bad's going to happen to them. And it's like, well, no, if I have this skill and I know how to do it and people find it cool anyway, let's like elevate and let's raise the vibe and let's do what we came here to do, and not just like get views and scare people. That
context, you know, like have context. Like, thank you for sharing that, because that was really fucking beautiful to hear.
Thank you for asking.
Oh yeah, I just love hearing that story, because for me, it was kind of like that. I've always been an avid lover of occult, hence occult media. You know, like I literally wanted to bring something out with my Scorpio shit, and I've always watched like readings, and I only watched like a few people. Like back then, it was only like on YouTube though. It wasn't so much on like any other app. So I had like my few YouTube favorite readers, and I had this random thought saying to me, why don't you just get your own? Like, and I was like, but I don't like it. I don't know anything about that. And they're like, just try it. So I remember walking in the mall, and they had like this weird, not like a crystal shop, but kind of like a eclectic, you know, those random eclectic shops that have like cool, like, you know, our cartoon stuff, but it's like on backpacks, but then they have like, you know, notebooks and like tarot, like it was like that kind of shop. And I walked in there, and of course, what would they had? They had a tarot deck. So I got the Modern Witch tarot deck. That was my first deck. And I personally have been shuffling for about 4.5, almost 5 years, but I was doing it prior for my own self for a good 2 years before I did anything for clients or, you know, showing it on social media. So I'm a book nerd, and I decided to just get a book literally on everything about tarot so I can understand it. But one of the things that I was told is to not read it when I shuffled, to just shuffle and see what I feel. Because when I feel, it allows me to have more context to it rather than me just giving the main book, you know, piece by piece to it. So that's how my family was talking to me. And family meaning, like, at the time, I didn't know it was my grandmother. I didn't know it was my grandmother that came to me and was telling me how to do all these things, because she passed away when I was 3. So I didn't really get to know my grandmother. I didn't know her energy like that, but she was directing me because this is a part of our family lineage. It maybe stopped at my mom, but it jumped to me as far as like the witchy, herbally, crystally, shamanism, if you will, you know, audience, getting all the clairs, all that shit. Like that's part of my lineage. And so she was helping me kind of, don't look at it, like look at it afterwards, but I'm just shuffle and see what you're getting. And then we'll talk about it. And then you can do like the notes and stuff and compare and all that kind of stuff. And then from there, I just kind of, you know, at the same time, it was during that emotional relationship that I was into, that emotional abusive one, that led me to understand a lot of things that I just didn't know, that helped me kind of get that clarity that I was searching for, that was already within me. I just needed to peel back that wound to kind of get the answer that I needed. And the cards helped me with that. And it was probably last year, right before I left the toxic household, that my family was like, you know, why don't you just go live for a week? your TikTok. Like at the time, I had another business, and they're like, "Well, you got a little fan base, and you shuffle some cards sometimes." Like at the time, I was doing journaling prompts, and then
Okay.
journaling prompts, and then I would shuffle a card and be like, "This is a card for the day," blah blah blah. That was like what I was doing on TikTok, and they're like, "Just go on live for a little bit, just see how it is. Just go live for a whole week and see what happens." That's literally how my brand Subconscious Me was developed, because I was fucking with being on live. I loved it. It was.
Yeah.
It can get kind of chaotic with people just like gimme a reading, all that kind of shit. But like I literally was like, the mama bear me was like, okay, shut the fuck up. Like I'm giving you a reading.
Yeah.
You sit down and you listen. I'm only giving you real readings. I'm not giving you the basic mundane shit. Like this is what you need to hear, because I'm clairaudient and I can hear what your shit needs to be told. So sit down and be listening. So it was much like that, and I just loved how that fueled me in the inside. And I'm hearing people say like, you were the first one to really help me understand what I was like. I didn't understand it, but I understand it. And by you explaining it in a way, by looking at a card, it helped me understand my shit, the other people's shit, and what I need to do for me, and that self-love and that self-care. And that's how it subconsciously developed into like femininity and like feminine energy, and like learning to trust yourself and to love. And it's just to be you and fuck anybody else, and like divine feminine. And like it literally just was like boom, boom, cat. And it all started with tarot. So it was
I love that.
it's very beautiful how tarot really can help you. If I get it, some people just do it, right, for just clicks and views, and or people that are using our content that wants to scam people that really don't have that good placement in your heart. However, the real ones, the ones that really are just there for shits and giggles because it makes them feel good, and on top of that they can get paid from it, like that's just like a beautiful energy exchange. It's a different kind of reading that you'll be able to receive that really fucks with you in a different way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, and just as you were saying, like, there's so many readers that if I see that they're live and I'm not planning on going live or anything, I'm going to hop on, I'm going to listen, because it's not just reading cards. Like people who are good readers, it's not just reading cards. You can know the meaning of the card all day long, but it's how you're going to interpret the message, but more importantly, how you're going to deliver the message. Because that is so important. And like,
it's a story, there's some context and stuff to it.
It's a story, and it's like, and this is where the connection to me with like this, and like, and I know people they might hear this and they might be like, what? But people are going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Like the similarity between going live and doing what we do with the readings and collectives and stuff like that is the same thing as like a sermon. You are taking the message and making it pliable, amicable, and understandable for everyone to receive. Because even if it is a donation or on a live or whatever, and it's a personal reading or whatever, there's still maybe 50, 60, 70 other people in there, sometimes hundreds of other people in there. And it's like, okay, I know that this can't just be for just you. I know that this message, while it is very personal, it is still for the collective, and that is delivered in a completely different way than, say, if we have a one-on-one call, because I know that it's just us here. It's just us and in our little bubble, and we can be straight up, and I can ask you, okay, well, so like, what was your relationship with your mother like? And like, and
it's more personal, right? Like the collectives are general, because we have to be, we can give so much, because I can look at the numbers, I can look at the colors, I can get the sense, because I'm an energy-based reader, so I'm sensing people's energy and like what they probably need to hear, and I can give you all that knowledge. And I can provide you all that stuff as a general basis. You take resonates, leave what doesn't. But when you get to a one-on-one, you can really get to the context, the underlying layer, the real questions you want to be answered, and let the cards, I just want to say it's channeling at its finest, in my opinion, because you're not only hearing it, but you're also using your knowledge base to really put down a piece of card and to give someone more deeper context than what a basic person would do. Just say, oh, Eight of Swords, stop thinking too much, or you're putting yourself in that, you know what I mean? Like it can be, it's so much more deeper, especially when you have your own spiritual counsel that comes in that wants to deliver a message. So you're being that conduit. You're saying, I am allowing this message to flow through me for someone, because someone needed to hear this. Out of the time and day for me to be here right now, for me to give you this message, this is literally divine timing at its finest. So either you take it and you hear the message, because we're, I feel you when you say people don't want to hear about, the sermon thing, but it is kind of like you're delivering a sermon for those people to hear in that congregation. It's that people are coming to you. Your energy has flocked to them, or you have flocked to their energy in a way for you to deliver something in that context. And they're hearing it.
It's the same in that it's the same story. There's only 78 cards here, you know, and like they all only mean one thing. But just as, there's however many stories in the Bible, they can all, or we can talk about the Quran, or we can talk about the Torah, or there's so many different stories and different depictions of things that happen. And it's like, if we take them all the way that we're supposed to, which is relating them to what we're going through and using them as parables and as analogies for our life, then there's a million different ways that you can use all of those stories to help you at any given point. I'm sure you could do the same thing and like cut out little pieces of scripture and mix them all up and then pull it out. And, it's exactly what we need to hear right now, and whatever. But it's that in that it is one story, but the parts that decide to make themselves known to you right now are the part that we need to hear. It's the part that, just as people pick, okay, we're going to read John 3:15 today or whatever, it's like it's the same thing. This is the story that's come out today, and we're going to tell the story of the Wheel of Fortune, or whatever.
Yeah, someone needed to hear this content about the Three of Swords in reverse. Y'all moving forward, but shit, keep healing, baby, because you ain't you getting there, but you ain't there yet. You realize it, but you need to maybe do some more healing. So it's a yes. I just want to say 1,000% agree with you on that. I kind of want to switch over to a little bit about your musical career, because it has allowed a lot of new things to come in. I'm sure a lot of new doors and a lot of opportunities coming in your way. And I know when we were briefly talking about what should we talk about on the the episode, we talked about purpose and what does that mean, and do you trust it, and is it something that you really want to do? And so I know music probably wasn't the number one thing, especially since you have your major, right, and theater. So I know theater, obviously, okay, so you can do all that stuff, but was music something that you were like, yes, that's a part of my life? No. Well, you're shaking your head. Heck no. Okay. Let's talk about that.
Not always. It has been for a while now. Music isn't new. Music isn't something that I started doing. I put out my very first song professionally in 2018. So even that, I've been doing this for a while, but it was before I started doing my master's degree was when I kind of had it was the crossroads moment of what am I going to do now? Is music going to be something that I take on? And I've had that question about music a few times in my life now about, is this even still something that I want to do? And I think because I've always found my way back to it, it inevitably is something that is for me and something that I am innately meant to be doing, whether it's for other people or just for myself, doesn't matter. But before I started my master's program, I was going to either do music or stand-up comedy. And now, I mean, if you're on a live with me, I'm gonna make you laugh. We're gonna do music. We're gonna do cards.
You do that. You do.
That's the goal. The goal has always been, I mean, my end result is to be a household name. I want to have my own talk show. Yeah. I want to have my own talk show. I want to be, I want to be an Oprah. I want to be an Ellen.
I can see that.
Yeah. That type of person that is, I got my fingers in everything. But I'm the brand. And that's always been my dream. And I know that in order to be that, I have to be unafraid to put myself out there by any means. And knowing that people enjoy my music, I was like, why would I stop doing it?
Yeah.
Why would I stop doing it? Because I was going to stop.
Shit.
I was going to, when I broke up with my partner, he was my producer. He was my music producer. And it was, this was the first time we broke up. And I was like, okay, I'm going to put out Still Peachy, and that's going to be it. That was my last EP. I was like, that's going to be my breakup album, and then I'm done. I'm not doing music anymore because it's too painful. And then, like I said, I couldn't help myself but come back to it, because then I was going through what I was moving through and wrote manifestations for myself, because I had no money in the bank. I was alone and feeling alone and not, and needing to be connected with my higher self, and not need, it was all of the lyrics that I needed to be reminded of. And I wrote that in February of last year, and didn't put it out until September. I didn't show people until September, because again, I was battling with this thing of, I'm never fucking doing music anymore. I'm done with music. It's,
Wow. So,
and then,
what is that? I'm doing the math, like 7 months later. So it's like 7 months of debating. That's so
7 months of me using it as an affirmation.
Okay.
And then it's turning my whole
fucking working it. Okay. Seeing the magic work for itself. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because it was like, I wrote it and I was like, well, I already told myself, and I decided that I was done with music. So I'm not putting this out. I'm just going to keep it, and I'm just going to, whatever. But then I kept coming back, and I kept listening to it myself. And I was like, this is good. This is good. And I would dance to it, and I would have fun to it. And then the manifestations started to come in.
Hi everyone, it is Candace. I am interrupting this episode between me and Peachkka because this is where my internet decided to go haywire. My computer overheated, and I obviously lost the communication between me and Peachkka, so we had to stop until everything could basically cool down. So because of that, we are going to have a part 2 in this episode, because when we got back together to continue our episode, it actually went on for about another 50 to 60 minutes. And I definitely do not want to keep you guys listening to one episode for 3 hours. So this is going to be a part 2 episode. And just like we did with Shay in episode 1, we're going to do the same thing with Peachkka. So with all that being said, I hope you guys follow over to part number 2. Sending you all so much love and light.